A man entered, bought a flashlight, and whispered, "Don't let them see you." The bell over the door rang once, thin and tired, like it had been rung too many nights in a row. It rang again when the door shuttered closed behind him, a second echo that arrived a fraction too late. I noticed that before I noticed him because at that hour, 2:17 a.m., the digital clock over the cigarettes insisting on the minute, small things felt louder. The hum of the refrigerators, the tick of cooling metal somewhere behind the counter, the fluorescent lights flickering in a rhythmic stutter that never quite went out, just dimmed and recovered like a shallow breath. He didn't look strange at first. That was what unsettled me later. I wanted him to have been obviously wrong. Bleached eyes, shaking hands, blood on his sleeves. But he was just a man in a dark jacket, rain-beaded shoulders, hair plastered flat. He moved with the careful economy of someone who didn't want to draw attention, which in an empty roadside store only did the opposite. I watched him through the convex mirror bolted in the corner, the one meant to catch shoplifters. In the mirror, he seemed stretched, his legs too long, his head bowed too far. When I looked at him directly, the distortion snapped back to normal. I told myself that was just the mirror doing its job. He went straight to the aisle with the camping gear. We stocked very little of it. A couple of dented propane canisters, plastic ponchos, a row of flashlights hanging on pegs like black fruit. He reached for one, then paused, hand hovering. The lights flickered again, and in that dip of illumination I swear his shadow bent away from him, elongating toward the back wall where the employee-only door waited. The refrigerator compressors kicked on all at once, a low animal growl. I cleared my throat, a noise to anchor myself. "Let me know if you need help." He flinched. Not much, just enough that I noticed. He turned, and for the first time I saw his eyes properly. They were red-rimmed, not bloodshot but irritated, as if he hadn't slept in days or had been staring into something bright for too long. He smiled, reflexive, the kind you give a cashier because that's what you're supposed to do. "I know," he said. His voice was rough, scrape-thin. "I just need light." He took the flashlight down. It was the cheap kind, blister-pack plastic, advertised in bold letters that promised lumens like a dare. He brought it to the counter, set it down carefully, as if sound mattered. The scanner beeped when I passed it over the barcode, sharp in the quiet. The man winced again. As I slid the receipt toward him, he leaned closer. Close enough that I could smell rain and something else, metallic and dry, like dust on hot wires. He lowered his voice, though there was no one else in the store. "Don't let them see you," he whispered. The words slid into the space between us and stayed there, heavy. My first instinct was irritation. Late-night customers like to perform little dramas, like to spook the person behind the counter because they were bored or lonely. I opened my mouth to say something light, to deflate it. "Who?" I asked instead. His eyes flicked past me, to the glass doors, to the dark outside where the pumps stood under their buzzing canopy. Rain stippled the asphalt. The highway beyond was a black ribbon, empty in both directions. He swallowed. "If they see you," he said and stopped. His hand tightened on the flashlight. The plastic creaked. "They learn your shape." Before I could ask what that meant, he paid in cash. Exact change, damp bills smoothed flat, and backed away. He didn't turn his back to the counter as he went, and when the door opened the bell rang only once. I watched him cross the lot. He didn't get into a car. He walked past the pumps, past the edge of the canopy, and then the rain swallowed him. For a moment, the darkness beyond the lights seemed thicker where he'd been, like a bruise forming. I told myself it was nothing. I straightened the rack of chips. I wiped the counter. I checked the time again, as if it might have changed out of spite. 2:19 a.m. 2 minutes gone. The store felt larger without him, stretched thin. The lights flickered, and this time I thought I heard something in the gaps between brightness and dim. A soft, wet sound like fabric sliding over itself. I laughed, too loud. "Get a grip," I said to no one. The bell rang again. I jumped. My heart hammered against my ribs, hot and sudden. A woman stood in the doorway, hood up, eyes down, rain dripping from the hem of her coat. She moved differently than the man had, hesitant, as if each step needed permission. She grabbed a bottle of water, brought it to the counter without looking at me. "Busy night?" I said, hating the thinness of my own voice. She nodded. When I handed her the bottle, our fingers brushed. Her skin was cold. Not cool from the rain cold. Cold like something that had been in a freezer. She looked up then, and her eyes were too reflective, catching the overhead lights and throwing them back at me. "Do you keep the lights on all night?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "They don't turn off." Her mouth twitched, a near smile. "That's good." She left without another word. The bell rang twice. I stood there for a long moment, hands flat on the counter, listening. The refrigerators hummed. The lights flickered. Somewhere, behind the back wall, there was a thump, just one. Like something had leaned its weight against the building to see if it would give. I went to the doors and locked them, even though policy said not to until 4. The lock slid home with a final click that felt too loud. The world outside pressed its face to the glass. Rain, reflections, the warped mirror of the store's interior. My own face stared back at me, pale and doubled. In the reflection, something moved behind me. I spun around. The aisles were empty. The shelves stood obediently in their rows. The employee-only door was shut. I breathed out, slow. "Don't let them see you," I murmured, mocking it, and felt my stomach drop when the lights dimmed in response, as if they'd heard. The first shadow appeared under the gum rack. It wasn't attached to anything. It pooled there, darkening, spreading against the tile like spilled ink. When the lights flickered back up, it thinned but didn't vanish. I backed away, heart pounding. The convex mirror caught my movement, stretched me tall and narrow. In the mirror, there were more shadows than there should have been, all leaning toward me. I reached for the phone under the counter. No dial tone, just static, thick and whispering. In it, I thought I heard words trying to arrange themselves around my name. The flashlight. The man's flashlight sat on the counter where he'd left it after paying. Forgotten in his haste or left on purpose. I grabbed it, tore open the plastic with shaking hands, and clicked it on. The beam cut through the dim, a hard white line. Where it landed, the shadows recoiled, pulling back like burned skin. A low sound rose from the aisles, a chorus of displeasure. Not quite voices, but close enough that my teeth ached. I swept the light around, breathing hard. "Stay back," I said, "because that's what you say." In the beam, I saw shapes pressed against the glass of the freezers, faces half-formed, features sliding into place as if practicing. When the light moved away, they flowed, learned, adjusted. They learn your shape. I realized then why the man had bought the flashlight and why he hadn't used it in the lot. Why he'd whispered. The light didn't just drive them away. Taught them. Traced you in brightness. Outlined you against the dark. My reflection in the glass doors blinked. It smiled before I did. Behind me, the employee-only door creaked open. The lights flickered, dimmed, and stayed low. In the gloom, I saw myself from 100 angles in the mirrors and glass, each version a fraction off, each one watched. The flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam a knife that cut both ways. Outside, the pumps went dark, one by one. I turned the flashlight off. In the sudden near darkness, something leaned close, close enough that I felt its breath. If it was breath, cool against my ear. It whispered, in my own voice perfectly learned, "Don't let them see you." The store's ceiling tiles began dripping, but the liquid floated upward. At first I thought it was a trick of sound. The night shift trained your ears to invent things. The constant hum of the freezers blended with the buzz of the fluorescent lights until every noise felt like it might mean something else. A drip could be condensation. A tick could be metal contracting. You learned to explain it away before your imagination did the explaining for you. The drip continued. I looked up from the register. A brown stain had spread across one of the ceiling tiles above aisle 3, swelling like a bruise. A bead formed at its center. It stretched downward, trembling, heavy with intent. Then it reversed. The droplet lifted, slowly, delicately, as if an invisible thread had caught it mid-fall. It drifted back into the tile and vanished with a soft, wet sound. The hum of the freezers deepened, as though the store had exhaled. I stood there with my hands on the counter, heart thudding once, hard. My first thought was exhaustion. I'd been on since 10. The clock over the cigarettes said 2:41 a.m., its red numbers bleeding slightly into one another. Lack of sleep did strange things to perception. Everyone knew that. Another drip formed. This one didn't hesitate. It slid out of the tile, fell an inch, then rose faster than before, snapping back into place like a magnet finding its pair. A faint tapping echoed above the ceiling, as if something were walking upside down. "Nope," I said softly to the empty store. My voice sounded wrong in the space, too loud, stretched thin. The aisles were empty. The glass doors at the front reflected rows of chips and candy, warped slightly by the curvature. Outside, the parking lot lay under a single flickering lamp, the darkness beyond it dense and unmoving. I stepped out from behind the counter. The tile shuddered as I passed beneath it. Tiny beads gathered along its edges now, dozens of them, swelling and retreating in a slow, synchronized rhythm. Drip, lift, drip, lift. Each sound landed just behind my eyes. I moved down the aisle, my shoes sticking faintly to the floor. The air felt thicker here, humid in a way the store's air conditioning never allowed. The freezers along the back wall hummed louder, their vibrations traveling up my legs. Their glass doors were fogged over, breathy smears blooming and fading from the inside. I wiped one clear with my sleeve. My reflection looked delayed. When I leaned closer, it leaned closer a half-second after. I straightened. It followed reluctantly, like it was remembering how. Above me, another tile began to stain. The liquid was clear now, not brown. Water, I told myself. Condensation from a pipe. A leak with bad airflow. It didn't matter that water didn't behave this way. The explanation was the important part, not its accuracy. A droplet fell sideways. It slid out of the tile at an angle, hung there, then curved upward, tracing a gentle arc before disappearing into a seam between panels. The sound it made wasn't a splash or a tap. It was a whispering click, like a tongue against teeth. I backed away, pulse climbing. The hum of the freezers wavered, warping in pitch. The lights flickered overhead, dimming just enough that the shadows deepened between aisles. The store felt longer suddenly, stretched, the ceiling higher than it had been a moment ago. I laughed, sharp and breathless. "Okay," I said. "Okay." The word echoed faintly, but not from where it should have. Came from above. I tilted my head back. More tiles were bleeding now. A constellation of stains spread across the ceiling, each one producing its own inverted rainfall. Droplets floated upward in lazy spirals, colliding softly with one another, merging, separating. They formed brief, impossible shapes. Threads, loops, delicate arches that held for a heartbeat before dissolving. The sound was everywhere. 1,000 soft taps played in reverse, a rhythm that crawled under my skin. My scalp prickled, the sensation of being watched blooming between my shoulders. I retreated toward the counter, eyes never leaving the ceiling. The register light flickered as I passed, the screen briefly displaying symbols I didn't recognize before snapping back to its idle glow. The phone beside it hissed, a low static whisper, though no one had called. "Stop," I said to the store, to myself, to whatever was practicing gravity wrong above my head. The front doors rattled. I spun toward them. The handles shook once, twice, as if tested from the outside. Through the glass, I saw only my own reflection and the empty lot beyond. No footsteps, no silhouettes, just the light over the pumps stuttering, threatening to go out. Behind me, something hit the ceiling with a wet smack. I turned slowly. A large mass of liquid had gathered above aisle 3, bulging downward or upward depending on how you looked at it, pressing against the tile until it bowed. The panel groaned, its metal frame bending. The liquid trembled, surface quivering, as if sensing my attention. Then it poured. not down. The entire mass rushed into the ceiling, flooding the space above the tiles. The sound was immense, a roaring suction that swallowed the smaller drips. The lights flared, then dimmed. Dust sifted downward, one of the few things still obeying gravity, and stung my eyes. I coughed, blinking. When my vision cleared, the ceiling was dry, clean, perfectly intact. The hum of the freezers settled back into its familiar register. The lights steadied. For a moment, the store looked normal. I sagged against the counter, breathing hard, my hands trembling. Relief washed through me, shaky and thin. A hallucination, a stress response. Anything but. A drop of water slid up my sleeve. I froze. The sensation crept against my skin, cool and deliberate, traveling from my wrist toward my elbow. I watched, horrified, as the fabric darkened along an upward path. The liquid wasn't dripping from the ceiling anymore. It was coming from the floor, from the walls, from the air itself, drawn toward a single point. Toward me. I tore my arm away, wiping at it, but the moisture clung, resisting. Around me, tiny beads lifted from surfaces. The counter, the candy wrappers, the glass doors, rising in a slow storm. They drifted past my face, brushing my cheeks, my eyelashes, carrying the faint smell of ozone and cold metal. The pressure in the room changed. My ears popped. The floor felt less solid under my feet, as if it were loosening its hold. I understood then, with a clarity that made my stomach drop, that the store wasn't leaking. It was inverting. The ceiling wasn't pulling the liquid up. The room was deciding which way was down, and it was choosing me. I staggered toward the doors, each step lighter than the last. The droplets thickened, clustering around my head, my shoulders, tracing the outline of my body in glittering points. The glass doors bowed inward, straining, their reflections showing me from below, from above, from angles that made my neck ache to comprehend. "Don't," I whispered, though I didn't know who I was begging. The doors burst open. Cold air rushed in, not from outside, but from above, a vast, empty chill that smelled like deep space and freezer burn. The night sky beyond the store wasn't where it should have been. It stretched overhead, visible through a widening seam in the ceiling, stars smeared into slow-moving arcs. The droplets surged. I felt my feet lift from the floor. As I rose, weightless and shaking, I saw the store for what it was. Not a place, but a pocket. A bubble of borrowed gravity floating in something much larger. The ceiling tiles weren't breaking. They were opening. The last thing I heard before the dark took me was the freezers shutting off, one by one, their hum replaced by a vast, patient silence, as if whatever waited above had finally been noticed and was glad to be seen.